This meeting is being recorded.
Alrighty.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you wanted to talk a little bit about Black organizations and what Black people can do to, form a functioning organization slash militia. Because one thing that Black people do lack is going to be a, armed force to protect Black people, from the atrocities and, from the government and, policing officials that's in our neighborhoods and in our communities and things like that. So, yeah, we're going to touch on a couple of different things that's going to be, instrumental for a Black organization, and just for a Black community of people to come together with a common goal and a common likeness. So, did you have any comments, questions, or thoughts before we get started?
No.
All right, awesome. So I mean, my presentation is going to be pretty short and sweet. I do have an idea, for a Black organization, and it's actually global. I don't want it to, just be, confined to a community or a neighborhood or anything like that, because you see a lot of that with the small communities that we have now, so-called gangs and stuff like that. I want it to be something that's going to, not only touch, Black Americans, but Black people across the world. And I want it to be, kind of a, I mean, I hate the word Pan African, but I do want it to be a global movement, in other words.
You're not a fan of that word?
I'm not a fan of the word, man. It's just been thrown around and stuff like that. And I mean, it never really made any strides in the Black community or anything like that. It's never made any changes. Sure, is there Black people walking around with dashikis in America? 100%. But I think that's where it kind of, the buck kind of stopped. In other words, so I kind of want to put a different spin or a different twist and something like that, stuff like that.
Black nationalism. How would you feel about that?
Black nationalism is cool. Black nationalism. That's where Black Americans need to start, for sure.
Okay.
It's Black nationalists, because I mean, we're trying to break off the little tribes, right? We're trying to break off as foundational Black Americans, Black people that come from immigrants, and we're lucky to have both. We're lucky to be foundationally Black and have a father that come from a different country as well. So I just don't see the need to break off. With a white person, when you walk into a gas station and there's white people in there, you're not going to be like, that guy might look like he's from Africa, or his ancestors might look like they're from the Caribbean. I mean, they don't think like that. It's just a Black person is a Black person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? I think we're all in this, together, in the grand scheme of things like that. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with it. The organization that I came up with, is going to be called IWA, International World Alliance. What I want everybody to do, and it's going to be a small organization. I don't want it to reach more than 1,000 members, just because I want it to be, a culture. I don't want it to be saturated. I want it to be hand-selected gentlemen and their families. In other words, so it's going to be called International World Alliance, Iowa. I want to master every facet, of not only business, but armed forces and politics, in other words. So I want to infiltrate all three of those industries, businesses, and, I want to have moving parts functioning in all of those things. Just because if you only have an organization that only focuses on one thing, like let's say, for an example, a gun club, or, a organization that only focuses on business, it's only covering one facet. Black people need leaders in every, aspect, across the board. So when it comes to business, I want there to be gentlemen that's going to be able to penetrate these, corporations. I'm looking for more Black CEOs, more Black head of business, head of companies, and then trickle down, into the management roles and stuff like that. There's not enough faces to represent us, in these companies, at these jobs and things like that. So, I want us to be able to, touch every aspect of business, be kind of like a silent beacon, and, have it be like a silent organization, something that you can compare to like Freemasons and stuff like that when it comes to business. As well as, I want to be able to go out at least 3 days a week with these same gentlemen in every different faction. Do it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And practice proficiency with firearms. I think that's going to be crucial. In being able to protect, us as a race. In other words, so I want that to be mandatory and things like that. And I do want there to be some type of hierarchy of rank, but I don't want it to be, set or fixed. In other words, I don't want there to be a certain power dynamic, in the organization as well. I want it to be checks and balances within the organization. And the same thing with penetrating business. I want to penetrate politics, you know, and be able to have a voice there in politics, be able to have whistleblowers there in politics, and be able to have strong voices there in politics that's going to, for one, uphold the organization's values, which we'll get into in the next video. But I want to be able to, be able to, protect the race in that manner as well. So, and banking as well too. So, and that kind of falls into business as well. So, yeah, what do you think about that so far? Any questions?
No, that's good. That's good. Um, I think maybe you can make a separate link for media, or I guess you could put that in business too. But no, that's good. We definitely need that. This actually sounds quite similar to another movement I see growing online. It's called like Afun or Zionism. Um,
What is it called?
Afun, Afun,
Okay.
and then there's another word, Zament,
How you spell
Z
that?
Zamint. But Zament's more like a racial category. It's made by this guy. You can look him up. Once you type in, you'll find him. Comey. I've actually talked to him. Uh, I've actually talked to him. I mean, he seems pretty chill, but it sounds quite similar to something he wants to set up. He's more focused on Africa, um, but he wants to set up kind of like I guess like a secret society, and his goal is to like promote more Pan African things. So no, I'm definitely for it. Uh, I agree. It's something we
Okay.
need.
Okay.
Uh,
Got you. And what we can do is we can look at some organizations that were, successful in the past, like the Black Panthers, Nation of Islam. Those definitely had a great impact, on the black community and stuff like that. But, I think it kind of died out, you know, in the early 2000s for sure. You just didn't hear anything else about the Nation of Islam. I mean, I know it's still really prevalent and stuff like that. Um, it's very well respected. I respect it a lot. But it's just not, it's been there, it's been effective in the past, but it's kind of like trickled down and went away and stuff like that. So, I want this organization to kind of be more silent. In other words, one thing that black people do is like, we're black and we're proud, we got our fists in the air and stuff like that, but that's not really doing anything for us. We need to be able to, operate in silence and be able to kind of like, infiltrate, these big organizations and stuff like that as well.
Trying
So,
to create a black APAC.
you know what I mean? So I think that's what's going to be the most effective way. You know what I mean?
Okay, no, yeah.
All other secret societies move in silence.
Hmm.
In a quote from Lil Wayne, real gangsters move in silence like lasagna. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of like going to be the best course of action. In other words, for black people moving forward and stuff like that. So,
Okay. Yeah. I definitely agree. Black like to flex a lot. Like to flex. Like I know like one organization that I feel like maybe flex too much was NFAC, not fucking around coalition. You
mhm.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
No,
I
that
think
made
he's in jail now. I think actually.
Yeah, and I don't see him getting out anytime soon. I mean, it made us look like absolute buffoons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think he pointed a gun at I think FBI or cops. It was someone.
Someone like that, that, and then that was just because that was idiocracy as well. You know what I mean? You're just asking, you know, incite something absolutely ridiculous. That, and I think one of the members actually shot himself, shot about himself, or something like that. I don't know, but I just know that they just were not moving with efficiency. It made us look like idiots as a race. In other words, um, that goes into another thing to where we're not going to be respected until we have something strong, and powerful in place. You
Hmm.
know, so that's definitely a bad example of how you want to go about it.
No,
Create
I,
a militia.
no, I agree. I agree. Yeah. Um, we have to learn the art of subversion, infiltration, you know, just taking over someone's systems from within. I definitely agree with that. When we get off the phone, I have something I want to show you, but I mean, when we get off this call, but yeah, you're right though. I mean, you have anything else? Because I'm really letting you lead this.
Sorry, sir.
You said you have anything else? Because I'm really letting you lead this.
Well, I think I kind of, in a nutshell, went over what I would like for an organization and stuff like that. I mean, what do you think are some key points, for an organization? In other words,
Some key points, particularly on the business part. Um, I think that if we're going to let in black CEOs, it's important that the CEOs, their company, isn't owned by a larger company that is owned by someone else, you know, of another race or whatever, you know.
oh, are you done with your point?
Yeah, yeah.
So, starting out, we are going to have to, be a part of these organizations that are owned by other races and stuff like that. That's just the reality of it. We're so far behind in the race, you know what I mean, that we're going to have to be able to, participate and, kind of assimilate into the, companies and cultures that are, already in place. In other words, just because we don't have anything concrete or set for ourselves, and we don't have any resources. So,
Hmm.
just like other secret societies, other races that move in secrecy and stuff like that, you kind of want to infiltrate and then, extract resources from these companies and these businesses, and bring them back home and put food on
Okay,
their table.
okay,
You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what I'm looking for.
okay, okay. So, what if someone, let's say, wants to be a part of your movement, but they don't necessarily have any skills? Will you have some sort of system in place where you can train them up on these skills and then put them in the job?
100%.
Okay,
100%.
okay,
I mean, I think one of the biggest requirements when it comes to education is that you're going to have to be able to complete the dictionary. I'm working on it right now, and it's a harder task. It's easier said than done. So that's going to be, you know, the 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 beginning curriculum is going to be reading the full dictionary. And then once the organization is more established and stuff like that, I would like to start a re-education camp as well. So,
okay, okay. Hmm.
so, so yeah. I put a lot of thought into it, and I think it's something that's really needed. Like I said, I want it to be a small group, no matter the scaling of the organization. I don't ever want it to grow more than 1,000 people. Now, there can be offshoots and people that help, in supporting roles and stuff like that. But I don't want it to exceed a certain amount because I want to be able to, always have it as a grassroots level. And I always want to be able to, touch the people that are around me and stuff like that. So,
Okay, okay. I understand. I understand. When it grows too big, then it's you know it just goes all over the place. And then
right.
people's I know what you
Values fading, stuff like that. So,
okay, okay. Um, do you have any sort of like education plan for like the youth to like to grow them into a certain type of person?
Yeah, I think that the values of the organization is going to pass down from the father to the, um, you know, to the family. But the basic requirement is going to be finishing the dictionary, practicing with your firearm, and understanding the creed and the values of the organization. There is going to be literature coming out, for the organization and stuff like that. Once it grows and once I accumulate, some more information about it and everything. And that's kind of like going to be our handbook, on guidelines of what to go by and rules not to break to be an organization and stuff like that. But when it comes to the youth, it's just going to be, following the values of the organization, upholding the creed, and just honoring your mother and your father because that's who's going to be teaching you the values of the organization. In other words,
Okay. Okay. Um, are there any other ideologies that you may draw some inspiration from?
sure. I mean, it's definitely there's definitely going to be things in place already, in religions and organizations that are in place that I am going to pick stuff out of. You know what I mean? Um, just because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it's the Ten Commandments, you know, of 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 a society, then of course, we want to uphold those as well.
Okay. Okay. Uh, hmm. Good thing. Good thing. What would be the role of women in this organization?
The role of women is going to be a very traditional one. Of course, they can uphold their own lives and their own jobs and stuff like that. But it's really going to be molding the youth. The father is going to lead by example. But the mother is more actively there in the home and stuff like that. So it's going to be, the primary job in the organization is going to be molding and taking care of the youth as well. So
Okay. What would be the role of children?
the role of children is just learning, being proficient in school, getting the highest level possible, achieving the highest level of possible of education, upholding the values that's taught by your parents.
Okay. So I'm guessing that this organization, I'm guessing that the business wing would be in charge of lobbying different policies, right?
Sorry,
So
I didn't catch that.
I'm guessing that the business wing would be in charge of lobbying for different policies that would benefit the organization, correct?
Sure. And, everybody in the organization is going to have their specialized roles, whether it be in business or whether it be in politics, or even just a militiaman. You know what I mean? Everybody's going to have, their own, niche. So we're going to have farmers. You know what I mean? We're going to have people that, do construction, um, um, people that do architecture. So, people that do medicine. So, everybody's going to have their own niche and things like that. That's going to, bring something very important to the table. Um, that's the biggest thing that Black people are lacking is just because we don't have any type of skill whatsoever. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to be a rapper. Everybody wants to be a ball player. You know what I mean? And that, like, what if they take those industries away? What do you have? You know what I mean? Like, what if the end of the world is here? And everybody's purging and it becomes a race war. You know, how are you going to survive on this planet? And that's going to be you know, the biggest focus, of our organization. If a race war was to break out right now, would Black people be eradicated? And, that's what we would be here to stop. In other words, if the answer was yes.
Okay. Okay. And what are your plans for the continent of
Sorry.
Africa? And what would be the plans for the continent of Africa?
I want it to be a stronghold. I want it to be a stronghold just as much as America is a stronghold. I would like to visit Liberia. I think that's an important country. I would like to visit Nigeria, and there's a couple others as well. And places that are scattered. I want to have a stronghold on every continent for sure, because there's black people on every continent. So
Okay. Um, I feel that. Could definitely link up with some of the more prominent people on the continent. I feel like there's a Nigerian billionaire. I feel like he'd probably be interested in this.
right.
But uh, but no, okay, okay, that's solid. That's solid. Um, because we definitely need some sort of force to challenge the multinational mining
Right.
companies across the continent. They need to be kicked out.
Right. And I mean, once a year there will be a demonstration. Um, Hold on one second. Yeah, once a year there's going to be a demonstration on every continent.
Okay,
The organization's uniform will be displayed. You know, and that's going to be like our symbol, right? That's going to be like, hey, us making ourselves known, and then kind of going back in the shadows and stuff like that.
okay, okay. No, okay. Um, where would you like to have the HQ set up? You know,
So rather it be a headquarter, I want it to be strongholds. Of course, there's going to be a stronghold in America. Of course, there's going to be a stronghold in the continent of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, there's going to be a stronghold in Europe, as well as South America, so on and so forth. So I want there to be strongholds. I want to play connect the dots on the map.
okay, okay. Um, that's that's good. Have you found anyone that's interested in this concept yet?
No, what I've been doing is, I definitely want to make resources abundant, and that's kind of like what I'm working on right now. I want to have, a pretty big war chest of capital, and so that's like my main concern right now. Just because I want most of the stuff to be funded. I wanted to make it. I want to make it easy to get uniforms. I want to make it easy to get firearms. I want to make it easy to get resources for farming. Um, you know, and be able to stockpile these strongholds. Um, you know, and make them, impenetrable. So that's going to be one of my biggest things I do before I actually, move forward.
Okay, okay. No, that's good. So it's kind of decentralized that way. Just if you take out one, the whole thing doesn't collapse. I get that.
Right. Right.
Okay, it's like it's kind of like Assassin's Creed. It's what it kind of reminds me of.
Right.
But all right. No, no. I mean, I feel that. I'm not against it. Not against it. Someone has to do it. Say
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's going to be strict requirements. There is, and we'll get into that, another time. But for the most part, it's going to be bettering, the race. Um, you know, it's something that's going to be put in place, to where, you know, black people aren't the laughing stocks on a global stage anymore. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's going to be one of the main focuses and main concerns, in other words. So,
No, no, definitely. It's important, you know, because the situation is dire. I mean, it's dire. Like I sometimes I just think about it, but but the good thing is you don't need mass amounts of people. You just need a
Right.
few, very educated, dedicated people with resources, and
Right.
you can accomplish a lot like that.
Right. No, 100%.
So it's
100%.
never too late. It's never over.
Right.
Just have to pull through. That's all.
Right. And at a time where, black fatigue is coming up and everything, um, uh, it's just ridiculous to me. So, and I mean, do I understand the concept of it? Yeah. But, it should be American fatigue. Americans are you know, the scum of the earth compared to every other planet or every other country on the planet. So, you know, if we're just talking about black people, that's a, we're leaving a lot on the table here. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about the black fatigue, though. I mean, I get it, I have it, but a lot of these things they're not being fair with these assessments because, like, I live in a very diverse area, and so I have fatigue of a lot of different people. But I'm not, you know, uh, what's the word? I don't make blanket statements about everyone because if you really want to do that, we could do it about anyone,
right,
But you can't expect it to be fair, So I get that.
right. If you can't take somebody by face value and understand who you're talking to, by the cut of their jib, then, for one, you don't have any street smarts. So,
Hmm.
you need to stay inside. And two, you know, um, you just don't have any understanding of, people and how they work. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, if you can't take somebody by face value and really understand where somebody's at or understand their, intelligence level by talking to them in 30 seconds, then, you're really lacking a critical skill, in other words.
I feel that. Um, yeah, no, I definitely feel you on that. Uh, you know, and I think this is especially important now because I'm starting to notice a shift, uh, like in the online narrative. I'm noticing a lot of people are getting more and more comfortable saying how they feel. So, you have to. So if other people are going to do it, these are people who don't have your best interests at heart. It's important that you have to now step up, you know, to counter them.
No, 100%. I mean, you know, I want everybody to say how they feel. I don't want to discredit any a racist, point of view or their opinion. But, of course, we have to amplify our opinions and our views and our values as well in a tasteful way. Um, you know, and this is not going to be an organization in the black community like this one. It's never going to be comparable, to any other black organization. So, or any organization really. I want it to be a group of extraordinary men. Um,
Okay, no, that's good. It's a group of elite men.
right.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's understandable.
Right.
We have 10 minutes left. Um,
I was going to say, do you have any other, comments or questions or anything like that?
no, I think I'll definitely have more next time.
Okay.
All
Yeah, I
right.
got you. Got you. Yeah. We go ahead and wrap it up. You going to give me a call after this?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
All right. Bye-bye.